During the ICANN meeting in Hamburg, ICANN 78, I had the opportunity to sit down with the author of our Exploring DAP series, Alex Deacon. Alex and I talked about a range of issues, like the governance gaps surrounding the misuse of subdomains and also the use of IP addresses in malware distribution. If you haven't caught up with Alex's blog, you can find it at this link. Enjoy the video. So Alex Deacon, you write a regular blog for the DNSRF. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And it's great to see these blogs being shared and talked about in the community. There are two sort of related points I wanted to just sort of explore with you. In an early piece, you did a chart which showed what happens to the levels of, let's call it, misuse of domain names.
Yeah.
You know, as you eliminate URLs, as you eliminate IP addresses and shorteners, and then each time that happens, it goes down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And then the really dramatic one is in subdomains,
Right.
isn't it?
That's right.
What can people do if they come across phishing or malware distribution or some kind of scam that's actually carried on a subdomain?
Well, I think one thing they could do, it's not clear to me, people know that this is a possibility, is you contact the subdomain provider, and no doubt they have terms of service that could be used to report, and then I assume that they would then investigate, and if there is abuse found, they would be able to remove the subdomain and stop the abuse.
Is there a common set of principles that they all apply? Is there a sort of code of conduct or practice that sort of applies across that whole industry?
There's, no doubt they all have their own terms of service, but there's nothing kind of that's applied universally. And I think in the blog we described it as a gap in governance. You know, this is something that perhaps people want to work on in the future. Is there a way to make this easier in terms of reporting and measuring, abuse from these subdomain providers? You could imagine a world where there's more coordination in governance across domain names and subdomain providers and hosting providers and IP address RIR type providers. That would really be useful for those people that have the job of fighting abuse. It just doesn't exist at the moment.
How would you go about it, do you think?
Well, I think the easiest way, and it's not easy, would be just to have a voluntary effort between the large subdomain providers, which is easier said than done, but you could envision a situation where you get the big ones in a room and you get 80% coverage, and it may be enough. I suppose there are other venues where this could happen. You could, it could happen in an organization like MOG or NANOG or something like that, right? Where these people kind of hang out and they show up and they do their own policy.
And do you think it's a new problem? I was really intrigued by the way that your graph kind of really fell off when you eliminate the subdomain providers. And part of me wondered whether as actually domain name security, I don't know whether you think it's increasing or getting better, if people are focusing on it a bit more. Maybe that's driving the abusive behaviour into ungoverned spaces, do you think?
Maybe, yeah. It could be. Another thing we noticed in a separate blog is the fact that for malware distribution, we see a lot of vectors that don't use domain names at all. They use IP addresses directly. And so that's interesting. So we noticed this trend, but we didn't really delve into why. And, it could be that for malware distribution, you just don't need that kind of human to machine, interface, like a string to an IP address. It could be that, it could be, as you alluded to before, that the abusers, if you will, the purveyors of malware, realize that if they get a domain name, they could be taken down, and that's not so much the case with IP addresses. So it would be interesting to understand that better. Well, I think the way it works is once you have to lure the human user via phishing or spam to download or click on something, and then once you click on it, that's when the malware infrastructure takes over, and that's
Right.
all just machine to machine.
I see.
So it's kind of hidden from the user. It happens secretly.
So you get the entry point, and then it's like,
boop. That's right.
Yeah,
And that's the world of malware,
Okay.
which doesn't really need human readable
Yeah.
identities. It can just easily be
yeah,
IP addresses, and I assume it's cheaper for them also.
yeah. So can you give me a sense of what you've got coming up in your blog series?
Well, so what's next is the last blog I wrote was introducing the UDRP data set that we have, which is quite interesting. It's a new data set, and UDRP is new to me also. I'm not an expert in it, so I've learned a lot. So
And UDRP meaning the domain name dispute procedure,
yes,
run by the policy is ICANN's
that's
policy,
right,
and
yes.
it's handled by numerous
dispute
accredited
resolution providers.
Yeah.
That's right. So the blog I just did last was just kind of an introduction to that. But what I want to do next is kind of dive in a little bit to into the data and see what we can find in terms of relationships of large brands or repeat offenders of the UDRP. I wanted to see if there's a correlation between UDRP domains and domains we see in other abuse lists that we have. So that will be the next. That will be the next blog.
Thank you very much, Alex Deacon. I hope you enjoyed this conversation between me and Alex, talking about his blog series Exploring DAP. You can find out more at our website, DNSRF.org. Thank you very much for watching this video.